Hey, what's going on, guys? So in this video we're going to make a hinge. So a great example of a hinge is as you can see, the skeleton over there. And what I mean by hinge is basically like, I don't know, what you use for a door, how a door opens and closes. You use something called a hinge, and it's kind of obvious, but it's very useful in 3D printing. And a great example is this skeleton right there. It's the action figure thing, and as you can see, the legs aren't completely attached right now, but it's a very great example of a hinge because it has moving limbs and body parts, and that's just a very good example. And obviously you have to 3D pen over it to sort of make like an actual shape and a head and everything. But that's such a great example of hinges because your human body has like a million moving parts of bones and muscles that move everything. So that's just an example of a hinge. And what I'm going to use this Overture build plate that I got with my Overture PET G filament, which you will be seeing in future videos. So I'm going to use this because my old build plate has a bunch of scratches from my another 3D pen thing. But I'm going to be using the 3Doodler 3D pen today, so let's get started. Okay, so the filament I'm going to be using is 3Doodler's green ABS filament, and it's 3mm, so obviously you can only use it for 3D pen. So let's load it in. And so here we go. So I'm just going to wipe that stuff at the end off, just so you have a clean tip to work with. And so I'm going to use the rectangles that the mat already has and use that as like a base to make my rectangle. So let's just start drawing a nice rectangle as like the base of our hinge. So yeah, and I sped this up.
Okay, so this is done.
So now I'm just going to fill in all these cracks and gaps as you see there with the 3D pen,
and fill in the
just so you
cracks,
got a
and then we'll
nice
start
solid
and then I'll make another one
base to work with. So I'm just gonna do that. Okay, so now that we have filled in all the gaps and stuff, I'm just to see, because this is the first time I'm using it, I'm gonna test the adhesion. Normally I'd leave it on just so it's like a nice base that it doesn't have to be stuck, but I'm just gonna remove it just to see the adhesion. And as you can see, it left a lot of marks, and that's quite interesting. The first time I put that up, I was like, what? Is that the build plate or like the filament? So like as you can see, I'm pretty sure that's probably the filament, or actually the build plate, because I see stuff sticking. So I already cut myself off here, but I got some editing magic here. It's 3, 2, 1, snap, snap, snappy, snap. Oh yeah. Sorry, I just had to do that. It was too funny. Okay, but there's two types of hinges we can do, and one of them is where the hinge is actually located on top of the actual thing, and the other one is where the hinge is located on the top of the side, not like on top of the actual plate. So what I'm showing right here is the first hinge, where they'll be stacked on top of each other like that, with the hinge under where my finger is. That's where the hinge will be. And the second type will basically where the hinge is located right above them. So first I'm actually going to make the hinge where the hinge is on top. I'll just call that hinge 1. I'll be making hinge 1 first, and then I'll make hinge 2. And to do that, I have this special little piece of filament that I'm going to use to make a little loop. And it's basically a normal piece of 3mm filament, except one end has some masking tape. So I'm just going to secure that down onto my build plate and then put it like right under. And you do want to leave a little bit of space so you can 3D pen onto the other side. And that'll be like really useful when you're 3D penning onto the other side. So leave a little space, and when you're doing that, you can now 3D pen over it. And because it's a little hard to see here, but it's actually sticking up, this side is sticking up on the left side. So then I'm gonna take a bit of tape and stick it on the other side. So now both ends are like touching the actual green piece of filament. Another thing you want to do is put your pen on the slow setting. On 3Doodler it's just a button, but I know on other pens I'll have like a slider on that side. But it doesn't matter, just put it on slow setting because that'll be really useful to get some nice straight loops. So then you can just start 3D penning just like that. So I'm going to turn my pen on, and I just put in this view so it's easier for you to see, but you can now just start 3D penning and everything should work. Okay, so now let's just peel off our tape on both sides, and then I apologize, this part is going to be out of camera, so yeah, just a heads up there. But what I'm basically doing off camera is just taking off the filament, so it's nothing big that you're gonna miss, but just a heads up because you are missing out on me taking the filament out. Okay, so now I'm just gonna take red filament so it's easier for you to see and insert that in the slot to make our bottom part of the hinge. So, and then now you can basically just take some flush cutters or like a knife, scissors, anything that can cut through filament, and just snip off the end. And you want to make sure to leave a little bit of space on both sides so you can basically seal off so it won't move anymore. So here you just see me with flush cutters cutting the end off, and so now you have like two little tiny gaps on each end. So it's not like completely at the end of the loops, but there's a small little piece of filament at each end, and this will help you for the next step, which is to take a smoothing tool. In my case, you could use something like a 3D pen and soldering iron, an actual 3D pen smoothing tool. You can basically use anything to sort of, yeah, that's my smoothing tool, and you could basically use anything. And what you're basically going to do is cut a little slit at the end piece, and then you're going to push in that little slit to make it to make the end like permanent so it doesn't slide around. So you can kind of see that here. Here what I'm basically doing is cutting a little slit in the middle to make the filament much softer, so then later I can use my finger and sort of press that in. So now after the filament dries, if you like slide around, this chart is also off frame, so that's my bad. I keep forgetting that I'm out of frame just because I'm not used to the slow camera frame, but yeah. Okay, so here I'm just doing the same thing to the other side, where I basically cut a slit in the middle of the filament and then use my finger to sort of press that in. So this, I guess you do not need to see, so I'll just do that right now. So okay, so we're at our final step, which is assembling everything. So you basically take the piece that we just made with the hinge part, and then take that first piece, like that first plain green rectangle, and you basically just have to put them together. So just put some filament on top like I'm doing here, and I'm using my Mint 3D Pro now. And then if you stick that right on top and squeeze, the filament should bond both the things together. And I do recommend PLA because PLA takes longer to dry, giving you more time to stick everything together, while ABS is more of an instant dry thing. So this is the one that we just made right now. As you can see, although it has a lot of stringing, it can barely do, it's probably like 45-50 degrees. Can't even do 90 because the back of our plate is actually hitting the thing. But now let's make version 2. And the second way is basically as like this is our old one, and our second one is basically going to do a little bit differently. This one will probably be able to do like from being close together to like separated, so like at 180 degrees, I guess, maybe. But this also depends more on how you make it. So it's basically the same process as before, except you're doing the thing next to it. So you basically just put your masking tape rod thing next to it, and then doodle a little half circle, and then you basically doodle, and then you flip it over, complete that circle, and then you just do the same process of attaching everything. So this is a little hard to see, but I will put it into time lapse now, just because one, I just explained to you, and two, it's very similar. So I'll just show you what the first step is, but as you can see, you basically just do the same thing, where the pen basically just draws a little half circle this time though, right over onto the base plate, and just go over it like 2 times, and that should be like more than enough. And then do on the same on the other side, and I'll put it in the time lapse now. just to check, I'll try making a hole here and there. Okay, I think it's hot enough. So hold in the middle. Okay, so this is basically one of the only extra steps for this hinge. Now, if you see, I'm going to use this marker to sort of make two cutouts on this piece of filament. And the reason for that is because if you see, you can actually see that those two green pieces will actually bump in to the green plate. So that'll make it it'll make it where you can't attach it directly to the red hinge piece. So, well, you could just doodle a little line, but that's just a little impractical and it's not as strong. So I'm going to use my flush cutters to cut two little, little cutouts out of it to make it so that our green little piece can actually fit on the red. And this is a little out of frame, but we're back. And this is basically one of the only extra steps. So now it's basically back to normal with the doodling. So yeah. Okay, so these are our two hinges. One is at 45 degree, not a lot of movement, and the others are 180 hinge that has a much more range of movement. So these are just two simple hinges that I find pretty useful for making stuff like that action figure you saw, and especially moving parts. So I hope you like this tutorial. I hope this helped you a lot. And as you can see, this is my action figure. Stay tuned to find a video about me making that. But I hope you liked this video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.